Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. Republicans hold a trifecta at the State House, majorities in the House and Senate, along with the governor's office. They could be facing some midterm headwinds in November, and the man at the helm of the party ship sailing into that potentially difficult political weather is newly minted NHGOP Chairman Scott Maltzie, who joins us in studio today. Mr. Chairman, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
So what is the approach for the midterms? You know, the tradition states that the party in power usually has it a little bit more difficult. So what's the strategy in the months ahead?
Well, first of all, we're going to reject any notion that we can't be competitive in these off-year and when our party's in power elections. That's just nonsense. There is no real reason why we can't be competitive in all these races and actually get out and win many of them. So our approach is going to be to make sure every Republican out there knows the importance of their vote, that their vote matters, that their vote counts, and that we truly need it if we're going to flip these seats like we want to do.
Yeah, is there a warning sign at all, though? The recent state rep election up in the Lakes region, that was a deep red district, and the Democrats managed to flip it.
Well, we're still analyzing what happened with that, and obviously I am very competitive. I hate losing, and we certainly wanted that one. But I hope for our voters that that's a real wake-up call. If 165 people, and there's more than that in Tufton Borough, Wolfboro, and Ossipee had shown up, we would have won that, and Dale Fincher would be in the House right now. So it's a cautionary tale, to be sure, but I think it's important to remind our voters why their votes are so important and why showing up at the polls is really going to make a big difference.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of Republicans who say something that's a little bit under the radar, but people should look ahead to, is the idea that the top of the ticket with Governor Ayotte and then potentially either Sununu or Brown, two big names that people know, that could be a real advantage come November.
100%. We, throughout our federal races this time, we are really fortunate to have some great candidates, and we think that they can be competitive in all of these races. And we believe that driving out the vote at the top of the ticket's important, but we're going to be working on building a robust ground game to help build the base from the bottom of the ticket as well. So we can kind of use a pincher movement to make sure that the voters, again, understand if they show up, we win.
And President Trump obviously not on the ballot, but a lot of times in the midterms the policies are, if you will. What are some of the issues you think you're going to use to draw a contrast with Democrats for voters?
Well, certainly when you look at the immigration issue, we have been very, very successful at that. I mean, there's like 0 border crossings right now. When you look at the economy prior to the Iran war, the economy was moving in great shape. We've lowered inflation from 9% to 2%. We have lowered energy costs substantially. And those are the kinds of things that we can point to. And I'm going to spend the summer reminding voters that the last 4 years previous to 2024 were not good. You know, 22% inflation, gas prices up around $5 a gallon. I mean, we tend to focus on what's happening today, and rightly so. But at the same time, things weren't good. And we want people to stay the course, to understand they voted for President Trump and for our Republican majorities here in the state for a reason. Let's stay the course. Now more than ever, we need to keep maintaining what we've done. It's how we ended up with the best state to live, work, and raise a family.
And one of the things your immediate predecessors tried to change, but kind of ran into this blue wall, it's that federal delegation. For several cycles now, Democrats have managed to hold on to those seats in the U.S. Senate and the Congress. We know New Hampshire loves to ticket split, right? There are people who vote Republican here. How do you figure out how to get them to vote Republican in those federal races?
Well, the one thing that Democrats have really done well is it kind of portray themselves as these moderates who can appeal to independent voters. I'm going to spend the summer reminding them of the extreme votes that these congressional delegations have had. They're going to coronate Chris Pappas, but his voting record, 98% with Chuck Schumer, 98% with Nancy Pelosi, 85% with AOC. This is not New Hampshire values. Chris likes to portray himself as a moderate, but that's factually not the case.
And you've got a epic U.S. Senate primary here, 2 former U.S. senators. That doesn't happen very often. In some ways, kind of a clash of the titans. To what extent, though, do you feel like you've got to try and keep the peace? Because we've seen, you know, the late state primary we have, things can get really bad within the party, and then it's very hard to turn things around in the final 2 months.
Sure. I mean, again, we do robust primaries and not coronations, so this is kind of what you get sometimes. But I always encourage our candidates to run the most positive campaigns that they can, to really highlight their records and to your point, both of these gentlemen have Senate voting records. They have records that they can point to and places of success. And certainly I would encourage them and any of our candidates to really focus on what makes them better than the Democrats, and then let the voters decide which of the two is the best candidate to bring forward.
One of the issues that we've seen where there's been some divergence a little bit between past NHGOP chairman and the governor is on redistricting, congressional redistricting. We're getting a little bit late in the decade now to do anything about that, but what's your position on this? Do you think that the legislature should still try to crack this nut while it can before we get to 2030?
Well, look, the reality is that when you look at voter registration right now, we are in the majority in both congressional districts. So frankly, there's no reason why we should be losing either of them. Again, it comes down to getting out the vote and making sure people realize that if they show up, we win. And, you know, would redistricting maybe make that a little bit easier? Perhaps, but I haven't given up the ghost on winning both of those congressional districts. I don't like ceding anything to the Democrats, so we're going to fight hard in both districts, and we have advantages, you know, electorally in those areas that I think people forget that we do have that 2-3 point advantage even in CD2. So I think we can be competitive in both of those.
Let's talk a little bit about the First in the Nation primary. It's a ways out still, and probably won't see too much activity on the Republican side until after the midterms. But you know, obviously we have a unique situation here where President Trump is going to want to play a role in choosing his successor. How do you see that fitting in with New Hampshire's tradition?
Well, we have to obviously be neutral. So we're going to start seeing presidential candidates showing up here probably in the next few months, probably. But we're going to be neutral. We're going to let the process work its way through. That's one of the reasons why we have the First in the Nation primary. So again, we do this so much better than other states. They have to engage in pedestrian politics. They have to not do huge media buys. I mean, much to your chagrin, perhaps. But,
right, yeah.
But they have to get out and meet the voters and talk to the voters. And we can do that better than any other state in the nation. So I'm always going to be a proponent for that First in the Nation primary. But we have, again, so many good candidates. You think about Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance and Tim Scott and Rick Scott. And I mean, we just have a long list of really, really qualified presidential candidates. And if the best they can do is Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, then I think we're going to be in really good shape.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But NHGOP Chairman Scott Maltzie, thanks for joining us here on Close Up.
Thanks again for having me.
Oh, yeah.